Hello, how's it going?
Hello. That's
Hola.
Hi,
awesome.
hi, hi. Hi, audience. Thank you for joining us today. I'm so excited about this event. We are here today to talk about revenue enablement. But while we give folks some time to join us, the audience, why don't you open the chat box right here on your right-hand side and tell us where you're calling from? We love to hear where you're from. And let me ask something to our panelists so we can get to know them a little bit more. What is your favorite late night snack? Let me start with Pete.
My favorite late night snack? Mm, Probably like leftovers or whatever. My wife is a pretty rad cook, so we always have like something going on there. So I don't know if maybe it counts as a snack, but usually go for that. Either that or I have a 5-year-old son, and sometimes he has a cooking class
Oh,
a
cool.
couple times a week, yeah, after school,
Cool.
and so he'll like cook something and like bring it home, and then I'll take a picture of it. He'll usually be asleep, but I'll take a picture of myself eating it and then share it with him.
That's nice. That's
Nice.
nice of you.
Yeah.
What about you,
What
Paul?
about?
Well, so my answer's super boring after that. Late at night, I either unwind by reading or catching
Mhm.
up on, the shows from the day. Not soap operas. Let me be really clear when I say shows, not like my grandmother's shows.
Uh-huh. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure, buddy.
yeah, yeah. No, there's a couple of business shows I record and to watch. So, and it's popcorn. Whatever reason, if I'm sitting reading or catching up with some tube, and I just like really good popcorn. So.
Nice. What about
Popcorn is
you,
good.
Eduardo? What's your favorite?
Um, I like apples with peanut butter. Those are definitely my
Ooh,
go-to
that's a
snack
good one.
any time of the day. Yeah, love
That's a
some
really
peanut
good one.
butter with apples. Yeah, and high protein, a little bit sweet. I like it. I love apples.
You're so
All
healthy,
right,
Eduardo.
I try to. Yeah, like exercising and eating well to keep the shape.
Mhm.
Awesome. But now let's talk about how to keep our companies in shape with those amazing panelists we have here today to talk about revenue enablement, secrets of PE-backed scale sales orgs with Paul Butterfield, with the one and only Pete Kazanji, and also Paul is here with us. We are so excited about the fantastic content and key takeaways you're going to get from this event. Let me get my slides up in here. And as you know, today's event is brought to you by the team at Modern Sales Pros. And for those of you not familiar with MSP, we are the world's largest and highest quality community for those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros. And our mission is to create an environment for our members to answer the toughest revenue questions out there and to help them see around corners they might not know about. And we do that through live sessions like this one you're about to experience. We have a robust online forum, we have quarterly summits, and we are starting to get to in-person to get back to in-person events, which is pretty exciting. And if you're not part of the MSP community yet, you will be invited to join right after this event. And as I mentioned, we have quarterly summits and we just launched
Oh
our
yeah.
summit for January. We are planning the Mega Disco in January. I am going to drop a link in the chat right now for you audience to sign up for it. We we are planning amazing events with stellar speakers and you can bring your revenue for like out of this world. Great way to start your sales year. But that's enough about other events. Let's talk about how to get the most out of this event here today. This event is being recorded so you can have access to the recording and all this knowledge anytime you need. It will be available in the Modern Sales Pro's previous events page, and you also will receive a follow-up email with a quick link to the page. Also, we love answering questions, so please use the chat and the Q&A function on your right-hand side just to ask all the questions that you want to know from Paul and Pete. They love answering questions, so please go ahead and do it. And today's
Love it.
event is sponsored by our partner Atrium. And we have Pete in here to tell us a little bit about Atrium. So Pete, I'm gonna pass the mic to you. You can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about Atrium, and then kick things off in here.
Thanks, Eduardo. I appreciate it. The Mega SCO design looks super amazing, and I think I've been hearing that the speakers are going to be super rad. So really
Mhm.
pumped on that. Yeah,
Yeah.
hey folks, my name is Pete Kazanji. I am one of the founders of Atrium. Atrium makes what we call data-driven sales management software. So it's software that helps sales teams, specifically sales managers, leaders, reps, etc., use data and metrics to measure and improve performance. And one of the things that's really sweet about Atrium is that it's extremely easy to set up. It takes about 5 minutes to turn on a free account with a read-only connection to your Salesforce CRM, and within 5 minutes, Atrium will show you how your SDRs, AEs, etc., are performing across dozens and dozens and dozens of metrics. So, Moneyball for sales. We're all sales nerds over here. So that's a little bit on us. I am because we think about enablement, specifically like manager enablement, through a lens of kind of like data-driven management. But I'm super pumped to be talking about revenue enablement here with Paul, who will give a little intro of here in a second. But Paul's been around the block for doing sales enablement stuff for a second here. Had a pretty storied career. Currently is the VP of Global Revenue Enablement at Instructure, which is a pretty cool organization. But importantly, Instructure was previously, right, Paul, owned by Thoma Bravo, a pretty storied private equity fund, and so Paul, because he's so expert at these things, was invited to share best practices around revenue enablement with the broader Thoma Bravo portfolio, which I imagine it was probably like dozens and dozens and dozens of companies. I mean, they and Vista are like kind of the two big dogs in terms
they have
of
a
like
big
PE.
portfolio. Yeah, this happened to be the CRO operating group that I was asked to come join. So
yeah. So and so what we're going to get to do today is go through some of the presentation that Paul put together for that CRO group. So Paul was gracious enough to share that with us here. So I'm super pumped because I'm looking forward to learning kind of more of the secrets of how these PE-backed scaled sales organizations enable their reps, enable their managers. So just a little bit of background on me. My name is Pete Kazanji. I'm one of the founders of Atrium. Prior to Atrium, I started and sold a recruiting software company called TalentBin. Was bought by Monster Worldwide in 2014. And then subsequent to that, I wrote a book on startup sales called Founding Sales, and then started a little peer education community called Modern Sales Pros. So that's kind of a little bit about me. Paul, maybe you could give folks a little bit of a rundown on what you spend your time doing at Instructure, and maybe the couple of roles that you did before that, just so they kind of like know who they're listening to here.
Sure, no problem. One point of clarification: TB Thoma Bravo acquired us in early 20, so we were public. They took us private, and then last summer they took us back public. But they are still the majority shareholders. So
there you go.
So we work very closely with them. As far as I'm Paul. Based here in Salt Lake City. Have been for the last 20 years or so. There's a fantastic tech scene here, and I pretty much have just grown up in tech sales. So I'm currently, as Pete mentioned, head of VP of Global Enablement for Instructure. We are an ed tech firm. 100%, well, 99% ed tech and educational buyers. Some folks may know us best by our LMS Canvas, which is the heart of our platform. So, and I've also had I grew up really in sales. Enablement came later in my career. I've been in enablement about 10 years now, but had the opportunity to lead sales organizations for Microsoft and Intuit, and going back a little farther, HP. So.
Nice. I mean, it's always really helpful and powerful to have somebody who has carried a bag previously.
Oh yeah.
As an enablement person, especially if they're previously been a manager, previously been a leader, because that way they can really empathize with like the whole stack, like what it's like to improve rep behavior, and then more importantly, like who's going to do that? Is that going to be enablement is the only one who's going to do that? Or are you going to get more leverage? And are you going to get your managers involved such that they can be doing coaching and like they can be a source of enablement as well? And of course, obviously you have to have empathy as a sales leader, as a sales manager in order to do that.
Yeah,
Cool. So I'm pumped to kind of talk through some of these slides here. So, Paul, maybe you can kind of talk us through a little bit about world-class revenue enablement.
Sure. Thanks. Well, what you're seeing right now on the screen is, I don't know if I'd call them pillars, but that's probably the closest thing that at the highest level I have found, and this is my third gig building an enablement team and strategy and program. I've been here a little over 3 years doing that. Previously, I did it at Vonage and another company called In Contact. And so what I've learned over that 10-year span is that we got to be tied back, correlated back to revenue. And that probably comes from, as you said, so many years of carrying a bag or carrying a team quota that when I was asked to go build enablement at a company where I was already a sales director, I really didn't know how else to think about it than that. Because I had, as a salesperson, I had sat through my fair share of useless trainings. And if I was going to do this, I was going to make sure that anything I built, we were going to be able to reasonably correlate back, and the sales leadership would agree. The reps are going to be more successful. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that means, but that's number one. You saw them with this slide, sales enablement, revenue enablement. I actually, I'll sometimes call it customer journey enablement. And that helps some people that aren't familiar with the other terms, because that's really how we look at it. Anyone who is speaking with a customer, interacting with the customer, pre-sales, post-sales, et cetera, really should be enabled along the same lines, which is where the global customized sales methodology comes in. There's a lot of sales methodologies out there. I have a couple that I've had a lot of success with, but the reality is the best sales methodology is the one that your team actually adopts and uses, so that you've got consistent, auditable, measurable results. And then the last bit is, even if you have an HR department that is doing leadership development, which we do here at Instructure, shout out to them, the revenue leadership team have specific development needs to their roles. And that may be rev ops, could be the salespeople, could be marketing. And so that leadership training and development that is the next level, down, I suppose, and is very critical as well. So.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's super important to be like revenue impactful. And I think, one of the things that I talk about with a lot of our, and one of the things that a lot of our customers will do is when they do a program, right, when they're doing an enablement program, they talk about the metric that they want to improve, right? Like, hey, this program right here, we're trying to increase like the win rate metric for these, for these reps, and they'll get even like more granular around that, and they'll say, hey, we're trying to improve win rate right here, we're trying to improve, conversion rate out of, I don't know, pilot, let's say some sort of key stage or what have you. And so, because obviously those metrics are then tied to revenue, like they're leading indicators on eventual revenue, and then you do the program, right? And then you see, did it actually have the impact that you were looking to do? And I think a lot of the times organizations have historically like not done that as well, because it's kind of been hard to measure the impact. And so this,
it's true.
This is one of the powerful things about running a modern data-driven sales organization, is that not only can you use the data to diagnose where the issues are, like, oh man, like we have a major pipeline hygiene problem across our reps now. Oh yeah, how do you know that? Well, look at all these untouched ops, like yuck. And then say, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to focus in some enablement resources on that, and then measure the decline on untouched ops in aggregate over the team. And then of course on a rep by rep basis, such that we can say like, hey, it's been 2 weeks, and like, Bobby, you haven't cleaned your room, right? Even after we did all those programs. And so that get like, and so diagnosing and then saying, hey, we're going to do the program and then measure the impact of the program, and then you get to loop back again, makes for really like it makes for improving behavior, which then improves the eventual outcomes of the of the sales organization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the ideal virtuous cycle. You'd mentioned a few minutes ago, sales leaders' role. In my experience, they and only they can have the Bobby clean your room conversation. One of the things I learned very quickly when I moved over to enablement from sales leadership is they may respect, they may appreciate any number of things, but they're not going to do what an enablement person asks them to do unless they know their boss is actually inspecting it and expects it as well. That's a critical alliance. So
yeah, 100%. And I think that we see that a lot with our customers, where when you have, because most sales managers come from being sellers. So if you have operations or you have enablement trying to do kind of measurement of improvements, but the way that that's being provided to managers is in a very not like undigestible, non-comprehensible mechanism. Well, you're going to have people, you're going to have people ignoring those metrics and what have you. And if they're ignoring them, they're not going to manage to them, which means it's going to be really tough for them to back up your enablement programs. And then you've got a bunch of lovely but kind of expensive enablement people working on stuff that isn't necessarily driving impact there. So maybe you can kind of talk a little bit about your Panda University here. Is Instructure's mascot the panda?
Unofficial mascot, but yeah, it's I mean, we've got, when our user conference has pandas running around, you'll see pandas, referenced throughout our swag and all of that.
Really?
And yeah, and so and the reasons
we're the foxes here at Atrium.
But okay, yeah. All right.
Okay. What was the reason?
And somebody, I don't know. It was in the midst of startup time,
that no one knows.
Yeah. Well, what I've heard is that a number of early employees all came over from one of the Panda name companies that had Panda as its name, or no, had Panda as their logo, and so they just brought a mascot. They brought that with them because a bunch of them happened to come over in a relatively short period of time. That's what I've been told. I don't know, wasn't there, but the point
but we have a university is the important thing.
That's the important part, right? So a couple of things here. The number one is take the time to thoughtfully brand your enablement program. There are a few benefits from that, but overall, I have found that it helps people look at the team differently. Like I say, it's branding, pure and simple, because you are selling internally every time you roll out or propose something. Because we're an ed tech firm, we decided to go. One of the folks on my team designed this logo. It was not me. Because we are ed tech, we went with a whole university looking type of crest, including pandas and truth piece. And you'll find this. So when somebody graduates from onboarding, they get a Panda U hoodie. And when yeah, you get the idea. And it's so that's how we use it. The other point on this slide is, if an enablement team hasn't already, creating a vision and a mission are critical. If you haven't defined where you want to go, how do you set the course? And so this is at the very high level. And I think these speak for themselves. And it's important to keep these updated. So we had a mission when I first got here. And as the team grew, the program evolved and got better. We revisited that within the last year, and as a team, crafted refreshed together what our mission is. And so that's the last thing I'd say about this, Pete, is involve the team, right? So that the enablement team feel that they are, they have skin in this game, and rather than creating a mission statement, top-down mission statements don't always stick. So.
Yep. I love it. Yeah. Over here at Atrium, I mean, we don't have a large enough sales organization for us to have a formal enablement program. Unfortunately, we'll get there someday. But I totally hear what you're saying around the branding thing. Like from a customer success standpoint, we our implementation kind of training program. We call it Atrium U, right? It's got like
Oh yeah.
branding associated with it. Yeah, exactly. When people graduate, and if they hit like certain usage levels, they get to be an Atrium sales scientist,
Yeah.
right? We send
That's
it
pretty
out to
cool. The
them.
beaker, that is pretty cool.
Yeah, right. It's kind of
It
cute,
is.
right? Because we're trying to make it fun, right? Like, hey, you're a
Right.
sales scientist. We're not a bunch of cave men and women here. Like, we got our act together. We've got science. We've got numbers,
Yeah.
and so it kind of makes it fun while people are, improving their managerial capacity
That's great.
as well. Well, and so maybe you can kind of take us through a little bit of like, kind of the how like what composes Panda University here.
Well, before we get right into Pan University,
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk a little bit about setting up an enablement strategy. There are a number of ways to do it. What I'm gonna and this is we're gonna talk about this for a couple of slides.
Mm-hmm.
It really is just kind of explaining it, and it's another whole conversation on how to do it. But when I was challenged by a SVP or EVP of operations earlier in my career to read a book called The Strategy Focused Organization, Harvard Business Press, Kaplan and Norton. It's been around a while, easy to find.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was the case studies in their book are Home Depot, ExxonMobil, companies like that. So what I needed to do, and what this ops leader recommended, is figure out there's probably something there for enablement, but you'll need how to scale it down. And so through some trial and error, I did. Now these are the elements. What the authors of the methodology. These are the
Mm-hmm.
key elements, and you'll see vision and strategy are right there in the core. So that's why I talked a little bit about the vision, the mission first. And there are some key components to it, right? What is number one at the top is what is our financial stewardship?
Mm-hmm.
How are we tracking against that? And how are we correlating? Let's be clear, only sellers generate revenue. But how do we reasonably correlate enablement activities back to, because I love the term financial stewardship, right? Whether you're an army of one or you're running a team of 50, you have been given resources by the company that you work for, and you are the steward of that. You want to make the most of it. The other three areas that it make up the strategy mapping, and we're going to see in a second, is what does your internal customer or stakeholder expect from you? As enablement, we are what the authors call a shared service unit, right? So we're an internal, right? What are the internal business processes that we in enablement need to be following to deliver on time, every time, right? Delight and all of that. And then the last piece is how do we, what this says organizational capacity, but how do we, I used to work for Stephen Covey years ago, sharpen the saw. I've just always loved that analogy. But as enablement teams, if we don't take a time to step back and do some enabling of ourselves, we're not going to be able to continuously improve. So.
I love it. Yeah, I think that's an extremely important thing. This is something that we see with our customers is a lot of the time, sales operations ends up being kind of that internal shared service that is who has a charter to empower and enable the sales managers with tooling and with process and automation and so on and so forth. And one kind of like component of that ends up being kind of like data and metrics, what have you. And when folks like lose sight of the fact that you have an internal customer, and like the whole idea here is to make it such that they're successful, hold them up, empower them, all those sort of things. And what that means is just make sure that you're actually like the things that you're providing them actually hit the mark, right? That they are like that they're usable, that they're actually being consumed, all those sort of things. Because if you're not, like, you're just kind of like you're just wasting salary expense, right? It's just like not useful, right?
Right. Yeah. I remind my team occasionally that we're not HR, and no offense to our HR friends, but we don't have to deliver legally mandated government whatever types of trainings, right? everything we deliver and develop has got to be, again, that we are reasonably sure and the sales leadership are reasonably sure is going to help these salespeople be more successful when they get back into the field. So,
yeah, 100%. Exactly. Tied to that revenue impact, right?
yeah. So this is an eye chart, I'll admit.
There's a lot of arrows. It's kind of
there
like
is.
that. It's like the meme from what is it? Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where the guy's like,
Yeah, right.
doing
Yeah.
the conspiracy theory or whatever.
Yeah. And again, we don't have time to really go fully into this today. But what I want, excuse me, the takeaway to be is, yeah, the arrows are a bit confusing at first, but once your eyes adjust to it and you follow them, you will see a few things. One, at the top, we have that financial perspective, right?
Mhm.
And the authors, you'll see the power of three at work in this map a lot. The
Mhm.
authors, their experience, they feel like no organization can focus on more than three things and do them well. So lots of threes. In this case, what is our top? And this is not our current strategy map here at Instructure. This is one that I had done at Vonage. So
Okay.
no secret sauce here given away. But what are the top three metrics that our CRO is measured on or accountable for or is driving their vision? But that's where those come from typically. And you'll see in this case, increased average contract value, increased product mix, cross-selling, in other words, and improve the percentage of sales reps participating at or above quota. Right. So it starts at the top. And then you'll see the customer perspective, internal perspective, and organizational capacity that we looked at on the last slide. And then the bubbles are just the elements. And this is a bit like a Rubik's Cube to create these things. There's a lot. If you do it properly, there's a lot going on here. But the tricky piece is once you come up with the right strategy elements in the ovals, every one of them needs to tie directly or indirectly back to at least one of the financials at the top. Hence the arrows. And so again, if once your eyes kind of stop saying what, you can actually map and see how it all goes back. So the big takeaway I will share here in my experience is executives dig this. And I think it's for a couple of reasons. One, depending on what their business school background was, assuming they went to one, they may have come across this methodology. But even if they haven't, oftentimes they look at revenue or sales enablement as butts in seats or maybe just onboarding, things like that. This is meeting them much closer to where they live and talking about things in the way that they think about it. And it really opens up their vision
internal
of what we're doing.
Internal selling, right? Which I think is really
exactly.
critical, right? Like
it is.
I think you were noting this earlier that it's all sales, whether you're selling the manager on the impact of participating in a program or supporting a program or whatever, or in this case, maybe it's going to a CFO or going to a CRO or going to a COO or CEO and saying, hey, this is the reason why we need an incremental headcount.
Boom.
To help.
You nailed it.
To help with this, or some sort of piece of some sort of piece of tooling or software or whatever. Like I think John McMahon, the author of The Qualified Sales Leader, and of course the father of MedPick, he likes to call this like getting to the pain above the noise. Because like I think this is something that happens with junior reps a lot of the time is they're like, oh, they have pain that my solution solves, and it's like, yeah, but like people got a lot of pains, man. Right? Like it's got to be the top two, it's got to be the top three, right? And so making sure that you're tying to this, so like you can imagine a situation here like increased mix of products sold. This is something that we see across our customers. I mean, we have like nearly 300 customers right now, and a lot of them are more scaled organizations that have multi-product sales. And so usually what ends up happening is either there's been some sort of engineering investment there, or maybe there's been an acquisition or something. And so then what they'll say is like, hey, in order to justify this engineering expense or to justify this this acquisition here, we really want to drive up average selling prices. And the way that we're going to measure that is, we're going to measure it from a lagging indicator standpoint of ASP, but also we want to make sure that we're measuring it from a leading indicator standpoint of like average op size in pipe is getting larger, as an example. That's like a good like leading indicator of like, okay, cool. Are we like, are our opportunities getting like fatter because we're doing a good job of, and so that stuff doesn't just happen magically.
Are they evenly weighted? You know, because you always got to watch out for that one big deal that's making their pipeline look richer than it really is. So it's consistency too.
100%. And so like that stuff isn't going to just happen magically on its own, right? And it's going to need need enablement. It's going to need and it's going to need measurement. And but the important thing again is like it all connects back to this thing like, hey, you know, we spent $100 million acquiring this company over here. And in order for us to get the payback on that, we want to drive, I don't know, like $1 billion in revenue off of it over the coming however many years. We got to get, you know, our 500 account executives cross-selling this in a meaningful fashion. And the way that we're going to do that is by training them on that and doing mock calls and so on and so forth. And then we're going to measure the impact in that average opportunity size expansion and then the average selling price expansion. And so that's the sort of thing like where the CFO would say, yeah, that's right. We did spend $100 million acquiring that company. And so like, you know, giving you $100,000 in order to have an incremental headcount that's like literally focused on driving cross-sell of the newly acquired product. Totally reasonable investment, right?
Yeah, no, and that's, but again, you're spot on. That's one of the other benefits I found with this is when you go to ask. So the key is once this is developed, going through it with your CRO, if that's your head, you know, your most senior sales leader, and answering their questions and ensuring that they are in agreement with what you've done. If they want to make some tweaks, make the tweaks, if, you know, and all that. Because then, as you said, when you're coming back later, for example, when I asked for a tech stack, it's been a little while ago now, but when I went and talked to my boss, right, I had my pitch ready, right? Here's the piece of tech I was looking for. Here's what it does. Here's the impact that I anticipate will have. And finally, here are the elements of the strategy map that this will drive. And since he'd already agreed to the strategy map, that made perfect sense to him. And so it's just another layer for them to, another way, I guess I'd say, for them to look at you. So,
yeah, I like what you were just describing around the impact, because again, it's like, it's like force management or like medic or what have you. It's like, hey, you know, here's the negative consequences associated with, here's the negative consequences associated with not changing. And then here's the anticipated positive impact, the positive business outcomes associated with, you know, this change and what have you. Cool. So let's talk about like how to make this happen via your enablement framework here.
All right, sure. This is again at a high level. So you've got your strategy map, you've got your elements, and as you mentioned, it's critical to have the right mix of leading indicators, lagging indicators. That's the challenge with the revenue indicators that are on the map. As important as they are, they're lagging indicators. You either hit them or you don't, and there's nothing you can do to go back and fix that. So what are you measuring? What are you looking at as leading indicators? And then what kind of framework are you putting in place to drive your best bets and how you're going to do it? So this is just how I look at the world, Pete. Other people have their own version. I do believe and have actually had success in enablement being involved in the recruiting process from the standpoint of providing analysis of successful reps, successful SDRs, that sort of thing to the recruiting team. We did a project, Caden on my team. One of the first things he did when he joined us a couple years ago is he met with sales leaders in K-12, sales leaders in HE, inbound SDR, outbound SDR, CSM, you get the idea, and ask them to identify what were the top 3 to 5 reps that they would clone if they could do it. Then what he did is he took a standard set of questions and he went and interviewed every one of those folks. Then he was able to synthesize that into essentially a hiring battle card for that role, right? So here are most successful people. They're not all going to view things the same. And how did they look at the world? What skills and things do they bring? So that's a key thing that maybe not everybody has done. Get involved with the recruiting and help that be a successful operation. Your sales leaders will appreciate it. Once somebody's in the door, I think new hire speaks pretty much for itself. They're still trying to figure out which way is up. And the challenge is we want to get them as quickly as possible into that conversant stage. Now, my definition of conversant is still over relying a bit on SE, maybe even a bit on the manager, but they can have customer conversations and they're not going to ski past their tips. Then the challenge is how quickly can we get them from conversant into full proficiency and quota attainment. Especially in that conversant to proficient, or even within the proficient stage, you're never going to have, right? Every sales organization I've been in is on a bell curve as far as attainment goes. And the reality is we're not going to make everybody in the sales org A players that are beating their quota every quarter. At least no place I've ever been. And so what becomes interesting here is doing the analysis. So for example, we categorize very broadly, if a rep is 100% or better, then what is the band from 70 to 99, and then 60 to, or 80 to 99, and then 60 to 70 type of thing. So look at those tiers and figure out where you can have the most impact. In my experience, it's often having C players or tier 3 players get enabled to become tier 2 players. There's a lot, especially in a recurring revenue model, there's a lot that can be gained there. And you also want to help enable your B players some of them to get over quota. But I have seen that sometimes people just get so focused on everybody being over quota, and there's missed opportunities to go in there and really set people up for success. That's more gradual or more incremental. And then the final thing is, once a rep has been proficient for a lengthy, a decent period of time, they're hitting quota, all of that, then what experiences and education tools should we be offering as an enablement team to help prepare them for their next role, ideally at this company? Retention is so critical. And again, it's not an area that everyone I've worked with in enablement really thinks about. But when you want to talk about having impact, that's another way to do it. And then below each of those stages, you'll see, again, just how I think about things. Number one is methodology. As I mentioned earlier, best methodology is the one your team actually uses. I have a couple that, like I say, I've had a lot of success with as a leader, sales leader, and enablement leader, but there needs to be one. And it needs to be custom to your organization and your stages in sales. It needs to be global, if needed to be adjusted for cultures, but still a global sales language, a global methodology that you're all following. The next one you'll see is product and skills. So we've got, there's the skills training. I separate those. Product training, again, needs to be done in a useful way for salespeople. Product training is not features. Product training is not feature benefit. Well, it is, and traditionally it has been. What salespeople need to understand are, what are the use cases? And more importantly, your ideal customer profile, or however you segment for each of those, typical buyers, what are the use cases that they're using your product or service to solve for, right? So that's how I look at product training. Skills are skills, sales skills, the types of things that you would normally think of, prospecting, objection handling, that sort of thing. And then the last piece is the tools and assets. That could be software, could be tech stack, or it also could be literal tools like battle cards, competitive intelligence, that sort of thing. So that is the overall matrix. And then you'll see within each of these boxes, and this does happen to have some Instructure. This is Instructure specific because my audience for that, when I built this, is you'll see how we're taking them through methodology, product and skills training, and tools and assets, and layering and spiraling on that as they progress from new hire to proficiency.
I love it. Yeah. And I think what we talk about here in a little bit here is like what these different things look like in the different steps of the process here. Maybe you can kind of take us through that, like what we would expect someone to, like what their skill level would look like at that hiring profile, that new hire period for methodology, product and skill training, and kind of like tool ability.
Sure. So you'll notice under methodology, we happen to use selling through curiosity, Barry Ryan's thing, but I've customized it for our market, and I've customized the classes, materials, all that. My experience is a new salesperson needs to be ideally in the job 2 quarters, certainly no less than 1 quarter before you try and give them the full methodology training. And what I have found, the reason for that is, and again, I've done it as a sales leader and an enablement leader, is they're still too busy trying to figure out the mechanics of their job and getting comfortable with, just those critical elements of pitching and maybe demoing. How do I take an order? How do I write up a contract? All that stuff. That if you bring them the full methodology too soon, it's just, it doesn't stick, right?
It's too much.
But after 1 or 2 quarters, they have a sense of things. They're more comfortable with the acronyms and the terminology and things that your company happens to use, and then you bring that in. So the reason that I've got a basic concepts in here for new hires is we want to give them just enough that, frankly, they don't feel stupid in team sales meetings when their leader or others are talking about the elements or stages of the methodology. So we want to give them that high level overview. That's one example. When I talk about product and skills training, I think about that, and I have some exceptional folks on my team that are have degrees in adult learning theory and instructional design and all of that.
Oh wow!
And I lean on them to I've been able to assemble a very gifted team, and I love working with them every day, and I try to make sure they know it. So what is that role specific, fully immersive experience? Now, we did not do fully immersive onboarding when I first got here, and it was about September of last year that the sales leaders and we started to realize that we were struggling with graduation rates from onboarding. And so we're analyzing it, and we figured out one of the biggest reasons were we were not setting folks up to succeed. They had a quota and they had accounts assigned to them day one. And the thing that brought it to a head for a few of us, at least, was when a brand new salesperson was logging into their email for the first time. IT is there helping them, and they had a whole bunch of angry escalations from accounts they knew nothing about waiting there, completely demoralizing. So with the sales leadership team, we agreed that giving them 1 to 3 weeks, depending on their role, to be fully immersed, so they come out graduated and ready to sell, just made sense for us. And so you typically will have the first week / whatever boot camp experience where everybody comes together, but then they need to go down individual pathways depending on, an SDR's doesn't look a whole lot like an enterprise salesperson's type of thing.
Yeah, for sure. I think we actually do a master class on data-driven rep ramping actually. And it's related to this because, like, you don't want to draw people into the deep end per se, but you want to track progress on how people are improving, and you can't look at like just the lagging indicators. You have to look at leading indicators as well.
Right.
Maybe Eduardo can grab the link to the data-driven ramping masterclass. But I think what can be really powerful about that is making sure that those people are going along their journey in an effective way that's making that, like, and then catching where they're off, right? Like, so a good example of this might be, you might have someone who looks like they're having a compelling pipe build, right? Like, there's enough ops in their pipe. I mean, the pipe is building, what have you. But then moreover, what you have to do is look at the like activity information associated with that as well, and say, hey, look, is their customer facing meeting volume at the same level as what you would expect as well? Is there other activity like their prospecting behavior, like, and if you have that staged out over time, sorry, if you have that onboarding program staged out over time, you would anticipate kind of seeing different metrics levels being hit at different times. Like, so as an example, so let's say that your training period is like the first 2 weeks or maybe the first like 4 weeks or something like that. Well, we probably wouldn't anticipate seeing a lot of customer facing meetings during that time period, right? Or
Right.
opportunity like inflow. And then moreover, if we did see a bunch of customer facing meetings like showing up in their metrics during that time period, we kind of be like, oh, are you like jumping into the deep end without without your floaties on? And so that's what one of the things that we see with our customers is making sure that they're using metrics to measure the appropriate ramp of those folks, not
Agreed.
from a booking standpoint. I mean, sorry, yes, from a booking standpoint, obviously, but that's gonna be 6 months down the road, depending on your average selling price. That might be 9 months down the road, or what have you.
Or cycle time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So like the longer your cycle time is, the more important it is to be bird dogging those leading indicators in a meaningful fashion. Well, can we talk a little bit about like how that changes when people get to the point where they're conversant?
Yeah, and couldn't agree more with what you were saying. For us, tracking those kinds of metrics in Salesforce and reporting on them happens to fall under tools in my framework, but it could fall, anywhere. But the trick is, as you say, the right leading indicators that you expect are going to influence the outcomes given the time to develop. When someone's conversant, that is typically, again, depending on your organization, when does that happen? But in general, I have found that fully certifying in the company sales methodology should really be the keystone of this stage, because that's what's going to really, if you have a good methodology and you've done a great job of implementing it, that's going to really help them accelerate that time from conversant into fully proficient. Now, you'll notice that in the product and skills training, we have a whole lot else going on right now. For example, we do you mentioned data, data driven. We happen to have Tableau. We happen to have a RevOps team that created a tool called OneRing that anyone with the Tableau access can go in and slice and dice data any way we want. So that's part of what we use is that data to figure out where are the weak spots or the soft spots to focus on. But that's also just data, and the leadership team, sales leadership team needs to have their lens put over that data as well, right? So that's going on. You mentioned earlier acquisitions, right? So we have been in active acquisition mode here the whole time I've been here. When I was at Vonage, we were also in hyper-activate or acquisition mode. That's a whole nother podcast or something, Pete, right? What is the sales enablement playbook for integrating these two sets of sales teams and all of that?
I can only imagine.
Yeah, but that's where, if you're conversant, you may have to all of a sudden, right? Hopefully we're just teaching you how to cross-sell the products that we have, but if an acquisition comes along, you got to know what that is. And we continue to track their progress in some sort of pathway tool. We happen to, Instructure purchased a company called Badger in the summer. It is a digital badging, pathways, all of that. We've rebranded it as now Canvas Credentials. And so we believe in drinking our own champagne, and that's how we are now tracking people's pathway. They're getting badging, all those things, because we own it internally. It makes it a lot easier. And then the tools actually don't change a whole lot here. The one big addition is Ombud, because our sales reps are expected to participate actively in their own RFPs. We have an RFP team, but Ombud is where we write and store all of our RFP content. And so that's something that now they would probably need to learn. So those are some of the highlights.
I love it. And then I guess the last step here, of course, is like when people get to the point where they're proficient, right? And it's like, all right, now they're cooking with gas. How do we move them along to kind of like the next stage of like their execution and their journey within the company? How does methodology, product, and skills and tools break out here?
Some of it doesn't change because if you're especially if you're a SaaS organization, if you're not constantly growing, adapting, and maybe even acquiring, you're not going to make it for long. And so there's always going to be a need for even a proficient rep to be brought in and and brought up to speed on new use cases, in a product or acquisition, that sort of thing. So that's there. I believe that the two big differences that you'll see here is, first of all, under methodology, if you'll notice, we want peer-to-peer learning is so powerful. And so once someone is at proficient, we will start to have them come and help coach and mentor others in the methodology. We will have them come and present. We're planning our FKO. Everybody probably is. Ours is in January. And we have about a dozen. We had 30 abstract submissions, and a dozen of them are going to lead sessions at FKO. And these are salespeople, sales leaders, sales engineers, right? So again, it's that peer-to-peer learning. And that's probably, to me, the biggest differentiator here is when they're good, let's tap into that. Let's acknowledge their success and tap into the fact that other people in the team are probably already looking at them and trying to figure out how they're doing it. So the biggest change.
Point of clarification, FKO.
Field kickoff. And so here in Instructure, it's field kickoff because you've got marketing, RevOps, and sales all together.
Got it. Love it. I love it. I love the more inclusive kind of.
And SGO is sales generated opportunity, in case anybody sees it.
Well, yeah, obviously. Right. Gotta be self-prospecting. Wonderful. Well, kind of like wrapping things up here, I think we were talking a little bit about like measuring kind of like success of things, but I think that there's some kind of things that you talk about here where you can measure beyond pure kind of like numeric measurement.
Yeah. The first is conversational intelligence. To me, that is a game changer. One of the weak spots, all the years I was a sales leader, is I did my best to do ride-alongs and that sort of thing. And of course, this is pre-Zoom and all that. It was always a challenge to know how well things were going with a salesperson. Not to do the big brother thing, but where's the coaching? And even better, if there were a way to help them do some self-coaching and self-tuning. Conversational intelligence, to me, that's why it is such a big deal. We happen to use Chorus. You could use Gong. I wouldn't get hung up. There's a lot of great ways out there to do it. But what that allows you to do is it's another way to measure leading indicators. When you're looking at product mix, right? You can build tags and you can build different things, different identifiers, and that sort of thing that the system will pull up for you. But those are the things you're looking for. What is the, are they responding to customers effectively? That sort of thing, right? All leading indicators that you can help analyze. The balanced scorecard is a piece that we're not going to be able to get to today, but the flip side of the strategy map from the same methodology is what are the leading indicators that we think are our best bets to deliver on that strategy. And the strategy map is designed to be about an 18-month to 2-year map, but the scorecard changes quarterly, by the half, that sort of thing, as we accomplish things and then level up. But that's the scorecarding. That's the way that we do a lot of our, conversational intelligence, and then scorecarding the activities and things that we anticipate will drive the outcomes. We happen to do our correlation with the two products you see there. Again, I don't want to get too hung up on that. There's a lot of great ways to do, using technology to create those correlations, those reasonable correlations back to but if you're a Salesforce shop or a Dynamics even, that is the Bible, right, for the organization. And so that is where you need to be able to tie back to as far as showing correlation. The last piece here is a little unique. And in Instructure, the RFP teams and the technical writers that support those RFPs are considered an enablement function, and they report to me, up through me. They have a director. And one of the things that he did was create an RFP writers dashboard. And what that is also helping us measure is how we're doing on RFPs, right? So there's a mix of leading indicators that we want to see in RFP responses. as well as, of course, the lagging indicator, whether we won or not. And so we actually, Danny, the director over this group, created a dashboard where we can look at and measure some of those things.
I love it. Do you guys, what do you guys use for RFPs? I know that Lupio is a pretty popular option for that, and they're actually an Atrium customer. Is that, do you guys enable when it comes to enabling reps to be, faster with their RFPs? Is that something that they use?
Well, in the earlier slide, you saw when somebody got into the conversion stage, we teach them Ombud. Ombud is a Lupio
right, you did say that.
competitor, and that happens to be what we've been using. That's coming up for renewal, and so Danny and I obviously we're poking our head up, looking around. I was at the Seismic Shift conference a few weeks back, connected with some of the folks at Lupio there. They are certainly, one of the platforms that we're taking a look at. But
nice. Yeah,
our Ombud contract isn't up until this time next year, so we're just starting to look around. Yeah.
Wow. Good old multi-year contracts. Wonderful. Well, I think just to kind of wrapping things up here, I think these are some kind of like takeaways here. How, what are some kind of like takeaways for people that you want them to walk away with from your presentation?
There's a couple things on here that we haven't already talked about, and this is specifically about revenue leaders, successful revenue leadership. And again, this is just what I've learned knocking around and having the rough edges knocked off of me over time and all of that. Number one, never stop learning. If we're asking our sales and revenue teams to be curious and continually open to learning, we need to model that behavior as enablement leaders and ideally as a team, right? So never stop learning. The way you did it last year probably is not the way you should be doing it this year, right? And the other thing that was not on the previous slides is you really need to be investing in your team members. Now, to me, that is leadership 101 stuff. I'm a big believer in the servant leader model. I try to live it. No, I'm not perfect at it. Nobody is, but I do believe in it. And when you invest in your team, people appreciate that. People notice it, right? There's all the memes floating around LinkedIn on people leave, for this reason, that reason. But I have found that when they know you care about them and you're investing in their personal development, it goes a long way. So those are the two call outs here. We covered all the rest of this stuff on the other slides.
I love it. Well, Paul, I gotta tell you, man, this is a masterclass in enablement frameworks and kind of how to approach this. I mean, I hope that people have. How many sellers do you guys have at Instructure right now?
We have a couple hundred, if you include, I'm including SEs and SDRs and all that. Yeah.
Sure. So, I mean, obviously, what you just described here was like, a tour de force of what a world-class enablement program looks like. But so hopefully there are some people who are with us today who have the champagne problem of having to enable a very, very, very large field like that. But even if folks have smaller sales organizations, 10, 20, 50 sellers, et cetera, I think there's a lot here that folks can take away. And we'll distribute the recording of this after the fact for everyone as well. So, Paul, this is super fantastic. I really appreciate you taking the time. You were going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, remember what you're seeing here has been being built since October of 19. So I would, just in that same vein of what you're saying,
so it takes a quarter.
Overwhelmed.
Just takes a quarter to do, right? Just knock it out.
Take some time, find the logical starting place, and give yourself time to build. So
nice, I love it. Well, excellent, Paul. Well, thank you for taking the time with us today. I think we're going to distribute the recording after the fact to everyone. Hopefully, people can find you on LinkedIn. Give you a connection there, give you a little follow there. I know that you do a lot of do a lot of posting and writing there, such that it's not just a one-off sort of thing. Oh, hi, Eduardo, you're back. Hello.
Hey, Pete, how are you? That was fantastic. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Pete. We are going to wrap things up now. But first, we want to thank everyone for attending. We loved having you here. Audience, you are the best part of MSP. And also thank you to our wonderful Atrium for sponsoring this event. They're doing great things, so be sure to check them out. And thank you also, Pete and Paul, for providing this great content. Paul, pe- people loved your book recommendations I saw in the chat.
Good.
So thank you for that.
Woohoo!
Uh,
Yes.
and again, the recordings and key takeaways will be available for your audience right after this event. Um, and now the panelists and I will hang out backstage just to chat a little bit more. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We will see you next time. Let me drop a link to the chat. Pete has another masterclass coming up tomorrow, so I just
Oh
dropped a
God.
link in there so
Oh yeah,
you
for
can.
the for golf for if you got any golfers, it's data-driven golf and data-driven sales management. It's the first time I've done this presentation.
Yeah.
Pretty
I'm
pumped.
excited to
Pretty.
see it. I'm registered. So
Oh,
All right.
awesome.
yeah. You know, like I say,
Sweet.
never stop learning. And I love golf. So
Oh, there we
Awesome.
go. Thanks, Eduardo, for the tease.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Let's hang out backstage and let the audience sign up for tomorrow's event.